And I'd like to welcome my second guest this morning, Congressman Peter Welch. And Congressman Welch, thanks for joining us on the show this morning.
Good to be with you and good to be with Hobbs.
He definitely rates a little higher than I do, Mr. Welch.
He's the highest rated there is.
That makes a lot of sense. So, Congressman, thank you very much for joining us on the show on this Wednesday morning. What's the latest?
Well, we were, before we went on air, talking a little bit about Bank of America. Also, a lot of their debit fees. But also, I think what's really important in Vermont is the FEMA money got passed. We had a bump in the road and a big fight about it. But the money that we're going to need to help Vermont get back on its feet, rebuild our roads and our bridges, repair or rebuild these public buildings that were damaged, and to give limited help. Unfortunately, I wish it was unlimited help to families whose homes were damaged or destroyed and businesses that are trying to get back on their feet. We passed that. So that's really good news. And we are now in the long stage of rebuilding. Also, I'm working well with some Republicans. Chris Gibson, right across the lake, Republican in New York, and Bill Owens, my neighbor across the lake, a Democrat. We're working real hard to see what we can do specifically for farmers. And in fact, we've introduced legislation that would provide crop insurance for farmers who didn't have it. A lot of these vegetable farmers, it's never been anything on their radar, and understandably so, because we haven't had this kind of event since 1927. So under our legislation, they get the benefit of crop insurance as long as they agree to buy into it now. And I'm working closely with Congressman Gibson and Owens on that. And the other bill that I'm working on that I think can help is to allow Vermonters, or the state of Vermont, to get $90,000 worth of federal money that it now uses to purchase food for our cafeterias at school. But instead of getting that out of the warehouse in Rhode Island, in canned food, spend that same amount of money buying local fruits and vegetables from Vermont farmers and put that in our schools, because it's a much more nutritious food. So there's been a significant agricultural impact as a result of this. And these are two bills that I think might help our farmers.
Well, considering many of these same farmers were devastated by Tropical Storm Irene, this sounds like it'll be a great way to help them.
Well, it can help some. And also, it just makes sense. If you have local food and you that tends to be more nutritious. It's healthy, and you get it right from the farm to the table, or to the cafeteria. And you don't have the average distance that farm goes from the farm to your dinner table is about 1,500 miles. And just think about all of the energy that's wasted in that 1,500-mile journey versus if it's a 5 or 10 or 15-mile journey. So, and also that local food always tends to be more nutritious. It frequently is fresher and oftentimes has less chemicals or fertilizers associated with it. So, yeah, we think this makes a lot of sense. And, of course, it really builds on efforts that Vermonters have had. We've got a lot of farmers who are developing these small vegetable farms, doing well. And we've got a lot of our schools that are very focused on putting more nutritional food before our kids.
Now, it certainly seems like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I think it can be a good thing. But, the big challenge is getting those roads and bridges rebuilt, making sure that folks know that we're open for business in leaf-peeping season, and that our ski season is strong. And that is just an immense amount of work. All of us, the governor and especially, but I've had a chance to do a lot of the tours of the damage, and it's just devastating. And then to see some of these folks who run businesses, and they depend on cash flow. And if the lights are off for a month or two, that is really, really tough on them. So this is the long slog. When you have one of these major disasters, there's an immediate response. People have been absolutely fabulous, as you know, all throughout the state. But then life goes back to, quote, normal. But it's not really normal, because if your house has been really badly damaged or your business has been set back, you've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and that's the stage we're in.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like, as you mentioned, normal is a relative term when it comes to that type of destruction.
That's right, Bruce. It really is.
I wanted to ask you, Congressman, really quickly. I know you're on your way to a meeting. You are working on some legislation with Senator Durbin, who is another Democrat from Illinois, on some swipe fee reforms regarding just what I think is just as you say in one of your press releases, just a shameless attempt by some big banks to make more money off their customers. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Well, yeah, two things. First, Bank of America is now charging customers $5 a month to have the privilege of having a debit card. And, that seems a bit extreme because you put your money, pardon me, like in your checking account. And then the bank is able to use your money and lend it out and get a higher rate of interest and make money on your money. And now Bank of America is wanting to charge you for the privilege of you allowing them to use your money to make money for them, not for you. So it really seems extreme. And it's an example, what the banks are claiming is that since they can't charge whatever they want on these swipe fees when you use a credit card at a local store, and the banks have charged the highest swipe fees in the world, and they have because there's no competition. Visa, MasterCard, they own like 85-90% of the market, and the big banks like Bank of America work with them, and it ends up being anti-competitive. It's one thing if a price is high because that's what the market demands, but it's quite another thing when the price to you and me is really high because of there being no competition. So I just think we've got to stand up for the consumer here and make sure they get treated fair and fight monopoly. It's good old-fashioned enforcement of competition.
What makes this even more of an issue for me is that some of these banks exist, they still are here because of the generosity of the American taxpayer.
Well, that's exactly right. The huge bailout. These banks got themselves into real trouble with their reckless practices and put the economy on the brink. And the taxpayer basically didn't want to, but had to come to the rescue so that the whole collapse didn't bring down Main Street. But that was pretty bad thing to make America do. And then now these banks are just back at it again. Their profits are high, their bonuses are high, their multi-million-dollar salaries are really high. And one of the ways they get that is by charging you and everyone else $5 to have every month to simply use your debit card. By the way, there's no risk to the bank on that. As you know, on a debit card, that's your money in your account. So when you use that debit card, the bank has no risk that check will bounce. They know whether the $30 debit fee or debit charge you want to make, they know whether you've got the $30 or not.
So, Congressman, what is the time frame for anything to happen on this? I know you're working on some reforms for this. Is this something we're going to see in the next 6 months or year or so?
Well, this is really an ongoing battle because, banks in the old days were much more like our local banks. And we have a lot of really good local banks and credit unions in Vermont where they compete on service, they give good service, and also what their job is to help, they lend money so that if you're building a house or you're a business and you want to expand, the bank makes this money by lending you money. What's happened in the modern financial sector is these big banks have gone into trading, and they use our money to then go speculate in the market. Like we just saw the example of how bad that can get with UBS, I think a Swiss bank, where a rogue trader literally lost $2.3 billion of the bank's money. So when you have a bank that is really acting more like a casino than it is a local lending institution, then you've got to rein that in.
It certainly seems that way. So, in your opinion, is there a good chance for reform down the road on this, or is this something that we're going to be working on for a while?
We're going to, you know what, we have to work on this all of the time. There's always a tug of war, but bottom line, what you need always is you need folks looking out for the consumer. I mean, the individual consumer who's got a bank account has no ability to affect what Bank of America does. So you've got to have, I think, a watchdog like the Attorney General or like the Securities and Exchange Commission, something that's on the lookout to make certain that competition is enforced, that rip-offs are not allowed. And, we're making some progress, but this is an ongoing challenge.
Well, I hope you won't mind the next time you join us giving us an update on where you are with that.
Well, I'd be glad to do it. Whenever Hobbs calls, I'll be here.
Oh, my goodness. I just can't get away from the fact that he's got the top billing, can I?
You know what, Bruce? Sometimes you just got to accept, who's got the charisma.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. Congressman Peter Welch. Peter, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the show.
Thank you, Bruce.